Hello and welcome to SA Decides Convenience Poll, Your Vote Counts. It's one of its kind survey based on extensive coverage, sample data and analysis representing the demographic variations of this rainbow nation. Now, after the remarkable accurate success of our 2014 SA Decides election tracker polls, we are back to make your vote count. And before we get into the details, here are the issues that we're discussing today. The foundation of all electoral exercises, how inclined are the people of South Africa to vote in the upcoming elections? Which demographic will play a decisive role in determining the winners and losers? We discuss the target group that political parties should watch out for. Have living conditions improved over the past 5 years? We'll find out in a while what you think. Before we start, let's run you through the process. And here's a snapshot of how we access the data that helps our team of experts extrapolate the findings.
The SA Decides opinion poll is back, offering informative, in-depth analysis of voter sentiment, and the accuracy has been proven. After delivering credibly in the 2014 national elections, the ANN7 team is here for the provincial elections. 10 teams and 50 journalists spread all over the 9 provinces over a period of 3 months, feeling the pulse of the people.
This place is too dirty, and as residents we are not happy. There's no water, no toilets, no rubbish disposal. We simply dispose of rubbish in the neighborhood. When we tell the municipality about our woes, they only say each one for himself because we located ourselves.
There is no municipality here. Our roofs leak. Nothing is done for us here. Some of us even used to vote. We don't vote anymore.
I'm a single mom. I don't have a car. And we've had a period where we didn't have any water for about 3 weeks, and it was extremely difficult for me to try and get water for my house.
ANN7's team of data capturers meets people on the ground across municipalities big and small. Questions are asked and results tabulated.
Our teams of more than 50 researchers on the ground, reporters, are traveling across the length and breadth of this country to every nook and corner, and they will be covering all the municipalities, remember, all the provinces, and they will be talking to thousands. So all these numbers are going to come over, and we are going to do a lot of projections, a lot of number crunching on what could be the voting idea in different provinces, different municipalities, and all those structures that are going to the poll down the lane. And we are going to do it week after week after week till the polling is over, till we know what the result is.
It is now time to deliver the findings, formulating a conclusion based on the results, accurate and stimulating, to give you, the viewer and the voter, an understanding of the larger picture rather than just the facts.
And joining us to discuss the methodology of this data collection process is political analyst Tshepo Kgadima. And of course, we have in studio as well Stumo Dlamini, he's the president of COSATU, Khalib Kachalia is DA mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni, and Yash Deshmukh is the editor for C-Voter, and they're the auditors of this data. But before we get into our discussion, we cross live now to my colleague Shante Jantjies, who will further explain exactly how the data collection process works. Over to you, Shante.
Well, the SA Decides convenience poll is not a random probability poll. The interviews are conducted by more than 50 reporters travelling across municipal areas in all 9 of our provinces. Well, the places in the green on the map show the places that we've already covered so far, and the municipalities marked in the red are still the ones that are still to be covered in the second leg. Well, the sheer geographic coverage also makes the data quite representative of the demographic variation, and this time around we are covering even more areas in South Africa with a larger sample size, hoping to get a more accurate prediction.
Thanks so much, Shante. Of course, now let's take a look at exactly how this process works, Yash, and particularly what motivated the significance, or why is this particular survey important?
It's important to track the opinion, as the polling is called as the chroniclers of electoral history, because the election results at large tell you what has happened, but the polls are basically there to tell you why it is happening or why it has happened. That is why, globally speaking, in all the advanced democracies, they have a culture of polling, not just once in a while, like 2 years, once in 2 years like we are doing it, but they are actually doing it every week, week after week. So we are trying to fill up that gap, and we are trying to make this process much more at the global level, that, you know, in South African democracy, if we could come up with the indicators and the trackers which could help us, not just the analysts, not just the journalists, but our audience at large, that, you know, these are the way the trends are moving, and these are the reasons, or these are the issues which could reflect in a particular election result.
Tsepo, do you think the political parties spend enough time and resources in establishing what the concerns are of the constituencies? Are they in tune, if you will, with the people that vote for them?
Look, if we take into account the current campaigning by various political parties, we saw that starting with the various election manifestos, which effectively was to say, we understand what your needs are, what your aspirations are, and therefore vote for us. We will be able to meet those needs and aspirations. And as campaigning continues, and when one watches a show like SA Decides, where there's ordinary people on the ground that are voicing out what they need, I feel that there is a mismatch. So you find that I believe that the political parties are talking past the voters. For example, if you go through the mainstream media, both electronic and print, you'll see that there is a particular narrative as to what is the key election issue. But when you watch a show like SA Decides, you find that what the ordinary people on the ground are voicing is not aligned. So I feel that maybe the political parties have not yet caught on to ensuring that they can be in tune. They can really understand what is the pulse, so that their messaging can be in such a way that the main issue is the main issue. And the main issue in this case is bread and butter issues, as it is a local government election.
Let's talk about the first question that we posed to eligible voters, and we wanted to know how likely they are to vote in the upcoming polls. And a resounding 64% of you said yes, and 9.4% said no, and not sure were 19.3% of the population, and D, can't say, indecisive there at 7.3%.
Ndizawuvota ngoba ndingummi walapha eSouth Africa.
I'll vote because I'm a South African citizen.
I am going to vote because I think my vote will make a difference. If I don't vote, things will remain the same. Please, let's all go out to vote for the sake of our country.
I want vote because they lie to us. Before we vote, they make many promises to us, but after voting, we don't see any change.
And then after vote, no, next.
Yes, I registered to vote because it is my right to vote. I would say maybe there is a few things that we could change, but thus far, I see that our people are busy changing things for us.
Misschien is daar een paar dingen wat ons kan veranderen, maar tot dusver te zien.
To me, it's a privilege, and I'm looking forward for that, because this is how we can, where diversity comes in, where multi-cultures as well as organizations and people can really combine with each other, and we can make South Africa a different place.
I'd like to see my community in a more brighter environment in terms of sanitation, health-wise, water, electricity rates, stuff like that. Just the normal stuff that make every household happy and can save a few rands. That's all I cry for as a general public.
We talk with our mouths and not violently with our hands. If they don't do what we want, we won't vote. We will keep our votes to ourselves like they keep things to themselves. We will not vote. Period. Since I began with the school, the roads have been in such condition. This affects me because even the children can't play safely. There's holes, they can get injured, and they have to share bad roads with the cars. We worry about their safety. I have registered and I will vote.
Especially as a youth, we have the responsibility when we vote in the local elections to make an informed vote. You understand? We should not go after, not vote for populists. We should vote based on merit.
Time now to delve into the details. We cross to Shante for further breakdown.
Well, let's break it down. Let's have a look at the provinces that are most likely and how likely are individuals to vote in the upcoming elections. Well, it looks as though the Free State there is at 79.4%, the Northwest there at 70.9%, and just under the 70% markage there we have Mpumalanga province. And having a look at the provinces that are least likely to vote in the upcoming municipal elections, we have Gauteng bordering just under 60%, as well as Northern Cape not too far there, 59.2%, and the Western Cape just below there at a 58% marks. Of course, that's the bottom three.
All right, thanks so much, Shante. Of course, just discussing the demographics and the sentiment of why people vote and why some are indecisive. I mean, I don't even know if there's an appreciation of the vote in itself as a democratic right. Yash, what does the data tell us?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that almost about 2/3 of South Africans saying that they are willing to vote, they are happy to come out and vote. That's a pretty encouraging sign, because globally in global context, in advanced democracies, mature democracies, the turnout is going down by the day, and it's a concern for them. So 2/3 is a very healthy turnout. Let me tell you, let's not be disappointed with that. But yes, there are some trends when you look into the map. You will see that more urbanized provinces are actually coming up with a lesser number of turnout. And while the provinces which have less urbanization and more rural folks, they are more keen to come out and vote. So that is something, and especially keeping in mind that these are local elections, civic body elections, where the urban population should be more inclined to come out. I think that's an area to worry. And so is the area to worry about the female voters who are saying that, there is not a parity. Their male counterparts are more likely to come out and vote.
Okay, what are the concerns around the demographics, especially with the urban and peri-urban and rural areas disparities?
Look, I think one has to take into account that it's good that we have still a higher number of people that are willing to participate. It was Thomas Jefferson who said that those that refuse to participate in politics are destined to be led by leaders who are worse than themselves. And also that in terms of South Africa, we have a government of the majority, by the majority who participate. So it is encouraging to see that there's still a higher number of people. But I think what maybe the political parties need to be paying particular attention to is to educate the electorate, because when we look at the more urban areas whereby we are seeing a higher number of voters who are expressing apathy in participating in the elections, as opposed to maybe the more rural provinces. So that is something that I think is for the political parties to say, well, what are they going to do? Because in this election, as is in the national election, every vote counts, but more so for the party. Even though it's local election, if you vote for a councillor in your ward, but as a party, you do not win the municipality or the metro, at the end of the day, there is one councillor is limited in terms of what they can do when one looks at it. So I think from a party point of view, the parties will be vying to be able to have the majority within that particular municipality to ensure that they control the mayoral committee, because that is where the decisions are. That is where the power lies, the ability to make changes and the ability to meet the expectations that would have been shared during the campaign time. So I think that is the work for the political parties has really, if anything, increased in terms of what they need to do to win each and every voter that is out there.
Okay, is it because of the perceived lack of service delivery, particularly in rural areas, that the metropolis has been enjoying more resources and development, that people are feeling disgruntled in rural areas? Mr. Dlamini?
That will be part of it, but also expectations. We rely much on what is promised to us, and if it doesn't happen, there's a problem. There is also what we will call the sins of the incumbents. That's a fact, and usually those who are already in power, there will be an expectation for them to have delivered. And when it comes to the time to decide, or like elections, the first point of call is to say those who were in charge. That's why you will always have a situation where it's local government coming, the councillor that has been there, people don't want that councillor. And it will not just purely because that councillor is not delivered. It will be mostly about a perception that that councillor has not delivered, and the accusations he or she receives sometimes will be about a national road. That councillor has no responsibility about a national road. He may have to account about why people's electricity had got to be cut off. So perceptions, expectations, but then genuine and real issues of really not delivering are a factor during this time. But largely it is indeed perceptions.
Okay, because the official opposition would want to have a fair chunk of the 64% of respondents that said they're going to vote. And what do you make out of the numbers, especially where only 19.3% of the population is not sure, and also to quash the whole argument that people are not going to vote, as we've seen in the demonstration of service delivery protests?
Look, I think certainly in a local election, you generally have a lower turnout than you have in a national election. That is a standard norm. However, these figures, if they are indeed true, are quite heartening, that we almost have 2/3 of the population saying that they're going to vote, and a chunk that are undecided. The expectation is that a chunk of those undecided will move in and vote. So we're possibly talking about around about a 70% turnout, which is pretty good for a local election. Now, of course, we wish to garner a substantial proportion of those votes, and that depends on the, as we've talked about, on the perceptions and the realities in terms of what people have expected and to be delivered over the years. They will measure this. They will look at it empirically. They will look at it emotionally. They will look at it with their hearts and their minds, and a combination of both. There are very few days left. There are about 50 odd days left. 53. Yeah, we are not going to be able to necessarily change everyone's mind between that, in that period. A bunch of it is being made up. But I think there is sufficient dissatisfaction, which we have read about, which we have seen, the pulse that we have taken on the ground, to significantly alter the state of affairs in this country.
Now, the first question we asked, or second question rather, we wanted to know if you believe that your vote makes a difference in the quality of service delivery. A number, or rather the people that said yes is 47.9%, 27.2% said no, and C, they said can't say, and that number is at 24.9%. What does this tell us, Mr. Kachalia?
It's a very interesting question. I'm not sure exactly what it says. It says on the surface of things that less than half of the people believe their vote doesn't nudge service delivery forward. That can be historically attributed to the fact that the experience of service delivery and successive voting over our period of democracy, some 22 years, has repeatedly under-delivered or not delivered. So experientially they're saying, why should I do this? Or if I do this, it doesn't get me any further. It's talking about unmet needs and promises that are not delivered. And that's where we find ourselves.
But where should the appreciation of the vote be, Mr. Dlamini?
Yeah, just taking from the point, remember, almost all the parties had to wait for the ruling party to roll out its election manifesto. And then they did that just about 2 weeks ago, and then others had to follow. The hype and the excitement then will be beginning at that time. And I know Yesh can give some better interpretation of that. That the hype and the parties are beginning to go out to say, come and vote. I expect the excitement to be going to build up. We're still 53 days towards the 3rd of August, and I definitely believe that by that time, that figure would have been much higher. He says it's the perceptions, it is the expectations, it is what has happened and what has not happened, and then the future. So we ought to watch that space.
Very optimistic, but I think maybe voter education in the appreciation of the gift, if you will, to be able to vote.
Yeah, I think what the numbers that we're seeing today here, they highlight one thing, at least for the political parties, that they have to do a lot more work to be in touch. They have to ensure, particularly in a local government election, that the main thing becomes the main thing. And you won't know what the main thing is until, as the old stalwart Mzala used to say, you have to cook rice in the pot. Unless you are there with the community, unless you are there interacting, positive platitudes from the rostrums are not the answer, because the message will not be aligned to the expressed and felt needs of the people on the ground. So it means, therefore, that any political party that wants to be triumphant in this election, it has to really do the necessary work of ensuring that they are there, and also educating to say, we understand what your felt needs are, and this is how we are going to meet those needs, and also being honest with some of the limitations in terms of budgeting and in terms of time that you might be able to achieve it. Because, as Shakespeare once said, expectation is the root cause of all heartache. And most of the unhappiness in terms of service delivery comes largely when there is over-promising and under-delivery. But under-delivery, because we have to take into account that South Africa, where we are today, it is one of the most highly urbanizing countries. Even in the provinces that we regard as rural, we're seeing high-density dwellings. That, in turn, puts an additional pressure. You look at the Northwest, and particularly Rustenburg, I'm told that there is over 30,000 people on average on a monthly basis that are emigrating to that in search for better quality of life, for access to the services that would otherwise not be available in villages, and also employment, of course, which is very important. That in turn means that you are actually making 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, and standing more or less where you were. So over-promising is not going to be the best way to go in this campaigning.
Over-promising and under-delivering. Rekgadima will continue that discussion. Another question we posed to community members, which ties in on whether they feel that their vote adds value to service delivery, is that wanting to know whether living standards in the past 5 years have improved or deteriorated. And 43.5% of you said yes, it has improved, and 38% says it's deteriorated, with 18.5% of you saying they're not sure whether conditions have improved or not. Really not a very impressive amount there. Less than half of people saying that their lives in the past 5 years has improved. Another question we wanted to know is whether they will improve, or rather conditions will improve, the optimism that we experience in communities. 51.8% of you says yes, and 38% said that conditions will worsen, with 28.6% saying that they can't say. What is the psyche at this moment, Yash, that we see around the data that we've collected from voters?
2 different things. One is the utter disappointment with what has been delivered so far, but the high level of optimism, which gives a hope for the future, that they are still expecting that to be delivered. I would just like to add to what the last point that we were discussing here. Look at the record number of independents that are likely to be in these elections, and look at the record number of votes that they are probably going to get. Now, it's very interesting to analyze that, as an independent corporator, independent person or representative, people who are voting for them, they know very well that as an independent individual, he or she is not likely to do much, unable to do much in terms of service delivery. Still, they are getting the votes. Some of them are likely to win. What's the reason? The reason is, again, the first point which right in the start where I said that people's expectation that if you cannot deliver, at least be there to listen to us.
So before we wrap up, let's do a brief recap of the big takeaways, and it's back to you, Shante.
Well, let's have a look at some of the main highlights that we can see from this poll here. It seems as though 64% of people are likely to vote in the upcoming elections there, municipal elections, that is. Free State seems to be the highest province there with 79.4%, with the Western Cape the least likely province to participate in the upcoming polls. Well, a lot of people are landless farm labourers who say that they want to vote there at 88.9%. Of course, the general labour there also tallying it at very dismal 12.6%. Well, 47.9% of people feel that their vote is going to be making a difference. Whether their living standards have improved in the last 5 years, well, 43.5% of people think that they have. Will my living standards improve in the next 5 years to come? 51% of South Africans, 51.8% of South Africans indeed, think that it will in the next 5 years to come.
All right, I just want to deal with the dispute here about Ekurhuleni and how it's run, because as Tsepo was saying, I used to come from the dusty streets of KwaThema Springs, except they don't exist anymore. Mr. Kachalia disagreeing with that, and this is exactly what the mixed messages that the voter is getting, Yash. How does that reflect on the numbers for the states?
Let's be a bit fair to all the political parties and representatives as well, because, you know, it's been more than 20 years of democracy in this country, and we also know that every 5 years you have a generation gap. There is a new set of voter which is coming in. For that voter, the baseline of services which they take it for granted changes, you know. So the generation which has seen nothing, something good that is happening is something which is recorded, and they understand that it is there. The new generation which takes that as a baseline, that okay, it was always there, that paved way was there, they don't recollect or remember what was it used to be like from when it used to be dusty, right? And every 5 years we have a new generation gap, new generation coming in. So let's be fair to those people who have worked hard in the field in the last 20 years, making those payments and everything in place, but they also have this very, very difficult task or struggle to convince the new generation, keep on reminding them that, you know, not that everything is bad. We have made a significant progress in the last so many years. You know, you need to take that in the context. And yes, we are here to listen to you, what the new things, more things that you are expecting from the government, and we promise that we are going to deliver that. Then this goes across the party lines, across all the things, you know. They have to deal with the new set of expectations, you know. The things that has been delivered over a period of time, it becomes normal. People take that for granted. And that is why sometimes the criticism or the disappointment is also, it's read larger than life, blown out of proportion as well.
All right, let's deal with Mr. Kachalia in terms of maintaining or dealing with the expectations, the legitimate expectation of voters, and the reality of being able to deliver for everybody's needs. Is this even possible?
Politics is the art of the possible. You have to do your best. This is a huge issue to deal with, as you've alluded to, with the amalgamation of the various districts that make Ekurhuleni. It has become a very, very difficult area to deal with. However, we've had 22 years, not 22 days, 22 years to deal with this. In 22 years, I've been to informal settlements who have been informal settlements since 22 years. And they are in much the same way as they are now, if not worse than they were then. Yes, you have improvements in Tembisa and various places like that, and significant improvements. But have you attacked and dealt with the spatial heritage and spatial separation that apartheid has put upon the people there? Or have you taken those people to proper community suburbs in any particular way? I have seen many of those places, and I think not. I've also seen evidence of mass corruption of a legally appointed city manager who's overseen billions of rands of fraud, and I've also seen things that have made my hair stand on end as I've walked through those very dusty streets.
Mr. Kshala, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Ekurhuleni, we know, has enjoyed 2 consecutive years of clean audits and, of course, being the preferred metropolitan, or metro rather, to sell their bonds to various investors. But this is a discussion for another day. So as we wrap up in the next broadcast, we get straight down to bread and butter issues. We'll talk about service delivery issues, how far we've come when it comes to basic amenities like water and electricity. And thanks so much to our expert panelists and our reporters across the country. And thanks to you at home for watching. For now, it's goodbye.